Hello ASTD members, fellow members. I'm really glad to be with you, if only through technology, and to quickly use my 10 minutes to talk to you about a subject I'm pretty excited about, which is SAM, Successive Approximations, as an alternative to ADDIE for producing high-quality learning experiences. I'm particularly indebted to Dr. Richard Seitz, who heads our studio in Tampa and has loyally and with enthusiasm carried out many of the versions of SAM that we've experimented with in order to test the validity of the process. And I have to say we're very, very pleased with the outcomes and hope you'll have a chance to apply them and use them as well. I want to say right away that if you are an ADDIE advocate, we only want to help, and if ADDIE produces the product that you want within the constraints that you've got, I think you're really fortunate, and you ought to stick with it. There's no reason to give up a good process that's working for another that might not do as well for you. But we have to say that in our experience, and mine over really decades of looking at this, that ADDIE, as a process that was developed by the military for people that did not have instructional background at a time of special need at war, when we needed to produce a lot of training material as quickly as possible. Cookbook approach was a really good solution, and its specificity and stepwise organization really was successful, and it was great. But today we have different levels of aspirations, as we want our learning experiences to be meaningful, memorable, motivational, fun, and use the technologies that we have available. So the challenge and opportunity are really quite different, and we found great success with SAM. So we just want to share it with you for your consideration. I think one of the first things to consider when thinking about a model is, what product do you want to produce? You can't pick the best process if you don't know what product you want. So you really need to start with a definition there. And you also need to ask yourself, what problems should the process be addressing? Now, for me, I look for instructional activities that are defined by CCAF. They're defined by context, challenge, activity, and feedback. I want learners to be put immediately into a contextual challenge where they have to determine whether they've got the skills already, they've got the knowledge already to solve a problem. That challenge keeps people awake, keeps them involved, but it also helps us know where's the right starting point for this person. If they can handle our first challenge readily, then they should bounce ahead as fast as they can. If they can't, and they ask for help, then we're ready to help them with what could be thought of as remedial instruction, whatever help that they need to get through that challenge. This context challenge keeps people really focused on the outcomes that we are striving for. Then, of course, activity is important, because if you're learning to do something, you really should be doing something while you're learning. So we like activities that replicate as closely as possible the choices and options that people have in real life. And the feedback we like is the consequences of those choices and actions. Not the kind of feedback that says, yes, Jane, that was a good answer, but look, Jane, what happened? You know, that margins went up, or the customer was especially happy, or our product won, first in class for quality, or whatever it might be. Those are the kinds of feedback that really work for people. So I'm looking for a CCAF product, regardless of whether it's delivered by an instructor in a classroom, remotely, through DVD, or through e-learning, however it might be done. I think CCAF is really important. I want in that to connect very carefully and thoroughly with the learner. I want to empower them to do things incorrectly, many things incorrectly, and see the consequences, and of course do them correctly and see those consequences. And then I need to orchestrate the whole thing into a package that makes sense for learners, so they know where they are, they know that they're making progress, and so forth. A really nice package. Now, ADDIE was, again, developed in a very nicely organized manner. But as I look at CCAF and I look at the way ADDIE is arranged, I'm not seeing it focusing on that kind of experience, on the learner's experience. I'm seeing it focused on content. And I think content comes in as a solution, but not the focus. As I look at those various tasks, all of them make sense to me. And they belong in a process of developing instructional materials, but they don't belong in phases, as is often laid out. Now, of course, there have been many modifications to ADDIE over time to try to deal with that, and we're just building on those ideas. I think that's going very much in the right direction. But if you're doing something differently than is described in the ADDIE process, then we need to be sure to give it another name, so we don't say we're doing ADDIE and implying that we're doing one thing when we're doing another. The other is that I need to connect. I need to connect the team. I need to connect the team with the buyer and have everybody involved to make sure that the process works. When I ask people what problems they have to be addressed by their process, I usually hear of two. One of them is the good ideas, maybe the best ideas, often come late in the process where it's very difficult to act on them. And the other is that they get unexpected changes, such as a subject matter expert looking at the material after it's all been developed and say, no, you've left out something really important. Or the buyer saying, I really want this to be more game-like, I thought this was going to be more fun. Or some big change like that. Just can be totally disruptive and very difficult to know what to do. Well, very similar to what software engineers have found and have developed the Agile solution to solve, in SAM we use iterations to address these various issues. On this chart, you see we're comparing traditional values and those of Agile and SAM. And in traditional values, we look at more the process and the tool. So again, here's the phases, here's the steps, we go through those. But now we value more individuals reacting and interacting with each other and looking for opportunities and looking for ways to make things better. And if we're taking small iterative steps, we can try something, and if it proves to be as beneficial as we think, then we build on it. If it shows not to have that kind of promise, we haven't wasted a lot of time, and we'll try something else. So it encourages creativity and it encourages focus on the final product. We don't focus nearly as much on documentation. In fact, with SAM, we're sort of anti-documentation, but we're really in favor of prototypes and working versions of the product, so that everyone can take a look at it, everyone can evaluate frequently, including potential learners, and the buyers and the subject matter experts and everybody else, and give us comments when we can take advantage of them. We try to have our customer, if you will, the buyer, very much involved in the team, evaluating and making suggestions, and we don't care nearly as much about following a plan as we do incorporating all the ideas that we can muster and getting them in quickly. It's really quite a different process, even though I must say that after I've spoken about this so many times, I hear the feedback, well, we do what you say, and we just don't see how that's different from ADDIE. Well, it's very different from ADDIE, believe me. Now, here is a quick example of an award-winning project to prevent bank fraud. And you'll notice here in the first iterations how rough and simple the sketches were. This was to have tellers look at checks and evaluate them systematically, determine whether they're fraudulent or not. After those sketches were made and a lot of discussion to decide if this is a good path, then a second iteration went through, and you see it's dressed up a little bit more, talking a little bit more about navigation in this e-learning approach. But you notice here, even on the introduction, the text was not filled in, not important at this point. And we see now a little better representation of the check, more of a thought about the systematic approach to the analysis, and a notion of how learners would be challenged to make sure that they have the skills necessary to process checks. And then the third iteration produced a final product here, which you can see here in its final skins and interactive components. Love to be able to talk you through each one of those, but we can't do that in 10 minutes. Now, in those cases where we have to incorporate a team that's going to do the implementation, such as when we're going to outsource it, or the project is so large that our design and development teams have to be kept separate, or for whatever other reason. We have SAM 2 model. This is the more elaborate model, but you notice the concepts haven't changed at all. In fact, we have this iteration going on in design, and we use exactly the same Agile iteration that's going on in development. I wish there were more time to go through the details, but Richard and I have tried to work all of those out and share them in our book. I hope that you can buy, borrow, or steal a copy and give it a try. We find that we're very happy with the outcome that we're getting from it, and our customers that have been using this process tell us that they would never ever go back to an ADDIE process again. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful evening.